I have many salespeople working deals, big and small, and they always ask, how do you close? How do you close? Is there a secret to this, or what works? And you have great experience with this, John.
Closing. You know, closing's a big and mysterious topic, I think, and everybody has their own slant on it. Books have been written. Go on, you go on the internet and search for closing techniques, sales closing techniques. There's everything under the sun, and I think I've read all this stuff, because when I was growing up in sales, I was looking for the secret bit of ingredient because to close the sale. Because typically the way everybody was taught back then, I think still today, is not really a real back and forth communication kind of sale like that we found really successful and the best way I've ever found to sell. Instead, they taught us that there's like 3 chunks to a sale. You have your presentation, where your job is just to be able to say the presentation really, really well. Mm-hmm. It's like, in sales, sales is selling, not telling. But most of us are trained to tell. Boom, 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 boom. You just regurgitate this spiel that they've typed out or taught you how to say. And then there's 2 other things. One is that then they give you like little note cards that have the objection, overcoming objections, or a whole sheet of the stuff, and you drill over. Well, if they say this, then you say that, and then closing techniques. And in sales, I always did relatively well, pretty well, just because I really practiced that stuff. I knew it front and back and A to Z, and I still think everybody who's good in sales knows their sales presentation or technique extremely well. I always say to people, look, if you really want to be a professional at this, like you want to make money, then practice like you're going to perform it in front of 5,000 people. Do practice. Most salespeople go in with absolutely no idea in mind, except that they know that they practiced. They're doing what they've been told. Probably haven't practiced enough, but they do the presentation, they overcome objections, and they have some kind of close. And I was looking for this too, because I was taught the same way. And so I practice, but then I'm looking for what's the magic that I can insert at the end of my sales presentation where I don't have to go through any of the overcoming objections and closing, just that they'll say yes. What is the magic? If I could throw some pixie dust around or whatever, I don't care what it is. What is it? But after all the searching and reading and what I've really found is that we've been trained wrong. It's not. I mean, you can do the way that I just those 3 chunks of stuff and practice really hard and be in the 20% of the people to make 80% of the money. Mm-hmm. But even being in the 20% doesn't mean you're making enough to survive. So I was always in those 20%, but I needed to make twice what I was making. And how do you be one of the 1%? How to be the 1% that makes a whole bunch. And the way that I found to do that is you kind of pitch everything you've known out the window. Not completely, but you rearrange it a little bit. And when you go into the sale, instead of thinking about how you're going to close, at the beginning when you're developing rapport and relationship, it's a huge focus there, because I ask people, I go, okay, and I ask a lot of people, a lot of different places, groups, I go, okay, rapport and relationship. How important to a sale, if a sale is 100% of everything, how important is rapport and relationship? And people always go, well, it's a lot. And I always ask for a number. And they always come down to like 75, 80%. Because everybody knows in sales, if they don't like you, they're not going to buy, right? So if that's the case, if rapport and relationship is so huge, why don't we focus on that rather than focusing on closing? Because if they don't like you, you're going to really struggle at the close. They're resisting. They're going, I don't like him. I don't like him. I don't like him. And so if you focus on, because we don't sell to computers. We sell to people. So doesn't it make sense to understand how people operate? And if rapport and relationship is so huge, shouldn't we really be spending a lot of time with that? So what I found is that you go in and really work on rapport and relationship, and then the next step in the sales process that I found is, I call it discovery, and a lot of people call it discovery. And you ask them about what they've got, what they like, what they don't like. A lot of new salespeople are definitely afraid of asking if they like the current service. What do they like about it? Oh God, I could never ask that, because then they won't like. No, you're asking these things to establish hot buttons. You want to know what they like and don't like, because that's how you sell at the end. Because when you find out that they like all these things except this one thing, You go, well, let me ask you, if I could provide all this other stuff, plus this other thing, can we do business?
Right.
And that's as big as the close. That's the close,
Yeah.
And it's not really closed at all. It's a tiny little thing. So I think these big closes are nonsense. It's overrated. It's the old 70s leisure suit, 3 martini lunch way to go in a power close, which, if you've ever had an attempt done on you to have somebody power close you, it's uncomfortable. They didn't set the table right. They didn't do the stuff up front right, and then they think they're going to close you based on what? Very little rapport in relationship and crappy sales questions,
Right.
It doesn't. It can work twice as good as most people experience if you focus on a little different way, and at the end you just ask them a little. Does this make sense? Yep, done. Make sure you have your paperwork out so you can complete the order. But the end should be easy. It shouldn't ramp up to a close. It should go down to something easy, assigning okaying the paperwork.
And I've had something to go with that. I've had salespeople who say, well, they want to think about it, or they're just not sure. But if you're going after the relationship and setting it up right, as John said, I know you've been very successful at this and had situations where you tell people they shouldn't have to think about it. They shouldn't have to go back a second time. The close should be done. And you can kind of talk about that a little bit.
Again, if you set it up right, you're selling to people, so basic psychology works this way. It doesn't work the other way. Mm-hmm. It's comfortable for all concerned if you make it a real natural flow. And again, if you're going to be professional at this, if you're going to make a professional amount of money, then just like anybody else who's been a professional at whatever or are a professional, they've had to study, they've had to work at it, they made mistakes along the way. Mistakes, I consider them learning experiences, not reasons to quit. Because it's all part of the learning process. It's like when you're in college and you're going to be a biologist, you take tests. You don't get everything right. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you got a B. And sales people think that if they get something wrong, they completely are bad. No, you're learning. Give yourself a little more credit. So anyway, you don't need to come up with the big sales tie downs, little tie downs like, if I could, would you? Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Just little things along the way where you're just making sure that you're all on the same page along the process. That's why, and we'll talk later in another little get-together like this about questions. Questions being so huge rather than telling and presenting. Right. It's more of a dialogue, finding out what makes sense to them, and it's more of a consultative approach, and it really feels good. Imagine yourself in the position of being sold. Now, how do you want to be sold? Mm-hmm. You don't want to be strong-armed and closed. You want to be kind of schmoozed along the way. And it's a real natural and good way to go.